coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome to another episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast. This week on the pod, we're celebrating the 35th birthday of one of our favorite TV moms, Lorelai Gilmore. Or at least the townies in this week's episode are. So we thought we would take this occasion to discuss all the birthdays on the show and what it means for our characters to mark getting older.
The episodes with birthdays have a surprisingly rich interpersonal dynamic thing going on. And, we have Rory's dual 16th birthday parties in season 1 when Emily demonstrates she knows nothing about her daughter and granddaughter. Then later, her 21st birthday demonstrates that not much has changed in the last 5 years. We have Lorelai's 35th in this episode that we're talking about, where the obligation set up in the pilot finally ends thanks to Richard's foresight. But it doesn't really make anything better. And of course, we have April's 13th birthday. That's a major step forward for Dad Luke and a big step back for him and Lorelai. But we'll get into that more soon. First, we're obligated to remind you that this podcast is spoilers all. So if you don't want to know anything, step away now and come back later. And if you could do all the YouTube-y things, like, share, subscribe, comment, that would make these non-birthday girls very happy. Now, for the synopsis.
Yep, so we kick things off this week with a tale of pose and fire. And after receiving her acceptance letters to Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, Rory and Lorelai make pro-con lists, of course, to help Rory make her choice. The Poe Society descends on the Independence Inn, and a frantic call in the middle of the night from Tobin, the inn's night manager, about a fire at the inn that causes Lorelai to go into problem-solving mode now that she has a bunch of guests to relocate. The town pitches in to help find other inns with vacancies, to put up guests who want to stick around, and to organize getting luggage back to anyone who decides to go home. Suki invades Luke's diner to make breakfast for everyone, and it starts off contentiously, but they end up finding a bit of a culinary groove with one another after accidentally creating Cajun Eggs Benedict. Lorelai notices that Rory's Yale list has more pros than any of the others, and she encourages her to do what she wants despite years of telling her about Harvard, and even goes to buy Rory some Yale swag to redecorate for her Harvard vision board.
Season 3, episode 18 is Happy Birthday, Baby! Rory plans a surprise birthday party with the help of the town for Lorelai's 35th birthday, including an attempt to make the world's largest pizza, then Connecticut's largest pizza, then Stars Hollow's largest pizza. Richard sets up a lunch with Lorelai to give her a check for $75,000 from an investment he made in her name as a celebration when she was born. But when Lorelai uses that money to pay her parents back for Chilton, Emily finds out about the investment, she storms off because she thinks that means the end of Friday night dinners. Tobin tries to woo Lorelai with the birthday gift to give him more responsibility at the end, which starts a bit of a contest with Michelle, who finally, after 5 years, buys his first ever birthday gift for Lorelai, a nice day planner from Madrid. But then Tobin gives her Joe Strummer's jacket, and we never see if Michelle is able to outdo him. Yeah, so clearly we see a number of birthdays through the series, more than you probably think of off the top of your head. And so we want to go through each one and see what these celebrations say about the characters and their relationships at these moments in time.
Yeah, I mean, we all celebrate our birthdays. We even did yours for one of our episodes a few months back. And I think it's important to really just address the milestones that we see our characters hitting and what those milestones mean for us in our personal lives. Because I feel like you have like mile markers with birthdays, sweet 16s, 21st, 30, 40, 50. But why aren't we celebrating or acknowledging birthdays in the same way year to year?
It's true. Like this year, I was quite on about the fact that it was my Hobbit coming of age. Like, live your best life, besties. Like, do what you want, right? Although I think when I turn 35 in a couple of years, I'm going to pull the Lorelai from this episode and do like the birthday week. So,
Mud Pack Mondays,
facials at Sloopy's, but we'll get there. Let's talk a little bit maybe about birthdays more generally first in terms of like, why are birthdays important to us to begin with?
I mean, it's you're coming into the world, but especially as you get older, I think it's a longevity thing, Not everyone is blessed with a long and full and happy life. Unfortunately, some people die young. And I think it's important to celebrate every single year, just another trip around the sun for that reason. You never know what the time you're going to get, and that's a little bit bleak and despairing to have to think about. But that's personally how I see birthdays, where it's like, I'm still here, and my friends are still here, my family is still here, the people in my life that are really important to me are still around. I want to acknowledge them every single year. It doesn't have to be like a 30th or a 40th or a 50th. If it's your birthday, like, I don't care if you're turning 62, 77, 89, we're going to celebrate it.
Yeah, wild out. Why not? Yeah, that was a little bleak, but we are wearing party hats. If you're just listening to this, there are party hats involved, even though it's neither of our birthdays.
Yeah.
Although by the time this airs, my half birthday will have passed, which is obviously a very important event for a 33-year-old woman.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Yeah, you're right about, birthdays being something worthy of celebration. And we'll get to that more a little bit later when we talk about Logan's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're really temporal landmarkers for us. And it, like, sometimes we can run up against a birthday, any birthday, it doesn't have to be a major milestone, and we feel like we're not where we should be, and we can get very sort of like down about the prospect of getting older. But I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go about it, because you're right, just another trip around the sun and continuing to be here is worth celebrating unto itself. But yeah, so more specifically when it comes to birthdays in media and how things are sort of portrayed to us with coming of age stories and transitional stories, and the way people on TV react to getting older. There's all these narratives about aging and it being some sort of scary process. But I think Gilmore Girls actually avoids that for the most part. We don't get a ton of anybody being like, I'm old, somebody get me a night cream. Like,
I feel like Sherry would have probably had that going on as she's aging. I mean, there are birthdays that we don't get to see. I feel like she would be a candidate for having those sort of, I'm getting older breakdowns and things like that. And maybe even Emily, to an extent, it went from what we don't see her on camera. But we never really got that from Lorelai and Rory. It was just always positivity. I don't care how old you're turning. We're going to celebrate you. We're going to celebrate you getting older. And I do appreciate that they didn't sort of have those existential breakdowns. Because it keeps it light, it keeps it lively, and I think it's encouraging for anyone who's watching to maybe try and avoid having that happen, because it just wears and tears on you, and it could bring about birthday blues and so many things, when this should be just a really happy and celebratory time.
Yeah. I don't understand the whole birthday blues thing. I've always been very much, I love my birthday, and like, even when we were in lockdown, I found a way to sort of like celebrate by John. If you're watching, I went on John's channel and we talked about Mean Girls, and
I do remember that.
I got all dolled up and did that. So
that was a good one.
I like how, you're right, Gilmore always makes it fun and celebratory. So why don't we start off with Lorelai, because this is like the episode we're talking about has her birthday in it. So obviously we have birthday week, Mudpack Mondays, double feature Tuesday, Sephora Wednesday, complimentary makeover Thursday. And I'm like, how is that different from Sephora Wednesday? Inquiring minds want to know, right? Who else gives out complimentary makeovers like that? I guess Mac does that, right? And then Big Fat Fabulous Friday. Yeah, the party hats might like cut off air supply to our brain at some point.
We're gonna try, but
yeah, we're gonna try to keep this happening. But yeah, so I love how much the town comes together for Rory. Like, Kirk even tries to get the Red Hot Chili Peppers to come play in the town square, which I love. That would be an excellent birthday.
Yeah, I just love all the ways that we see the townies, and we're talking about Lorelai first, but I just love how the town comes together when it's anyone's birthday. And we're going to stick with Lorelai, but like one thing that comes to mind for me is, Luke just setting up balloons for Rory in the diner before she goes to school. Like, he didn't have to do that. I mean, but he remembered it was her birthday. He did that for her. We'll talk about her too, but this is this is about Lorelai right now. What do you think was the best gift or best thought or like moment that Lorelai was on the receiving end of from anyone on the show for her birthday?
I mean, I feel like I gotta go with the big pizza, because like, as nice as it is to receive a check for $75,000, even if there's no strings attached, the fallout from it was totally bittersweet. Maybe that's like a hindsight 2020 kind of thing. But the pizza was just like pure love and ingenuity and like just the town really coming together to try to make something big happen for her. So that would be my pick.
Yeah. I mean, you stole mine, but it's okay. I mean,
It's not like we're the same person or anything.
no. And who's ever going to turn down, like, Connecticut's largest pizza?
Well, Connecticut's largest pizza was, I think, done by Litchfield, and it was 98 feet. And
Don't tell Taylor that.
yeah, Pete said the best he could do was 12 feet. So,
Yeah. But still,
it's not even the Tri-County area's largest pizza. But the thing that gets me about it, though, is that Rory didn't include Suki and Jackson.
that was a slight that I can't forgive, personally.
Major oversight.
That's this woman's livelihood. This is her passion. And you're going to throw this party and not let her just call on her culinary skills for that level of involvement, but also just the general involvement that was lacking in general. Like, I don't understand. Like, that's your mother's best friend. This is a really big milestone for your mother. How do you not include her? Like, I don't understand where that oversight came from. And I think she and Jackson were right to feel slighted in the way that they did and be like, WTF, Rory?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe she was like, well, Suki's pregnant. Maybe she doesn't have as much time or energy, but totally not cool that she didn't even think about it. I think it might be yet another one of those moments people point to for like Rory is just really self-centered and doesn't think about other people and how they feel. So
put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, we'll chalk it up to that.
Yeah.
Okay. There was another gift that Lorelai got that was quite impressive, but I didn't pick it for the best thing because honestly, I feel like that one came with strings. Obviously, I'm talking about the sort of rivalry developing between Tobin and Michelle. So Tobin starts out getting Lorelai just a simple, sweet cappuccino candle, which sounds amazing, by the way.
Yes, it does.
Perfectly appropriate birthday gift for your boss. If you're going to be getting gifts for your boss at all, it gets a little dicey sometimes. But and then Michelle sees Tobin trying to weasel his way into getting more hours, more time, more responsibility, trying to encroach on his territory, if you will.
Yep.
And he's like, I got to go run an errand. And so he gets a day book brought in from Madrid, ordered from Madrid. And the minute Tobin sees that, he pulls out Joe Strummer's leather jacket from the 1979 Pearl Harbor tour and gives it to Lorelai. Clearly that was something he bought for himself and was very excited about. And he was like, well, now I got to do this because Lorelai's a big Clash fan, and this is the trick. This is the key to getting what I want.
Yeah.
And he takes on that moment.
I hate it though, because it was essentially these two men just trying to buy favor with Lorelai. And that completely takes away what her birthday is about, which is just, it's about her. It's about celebrating her. But you're just trying to get into her good graces right now for your own selfish gain and benefit and promotion. And you're not, like, gift giving needs to happen in a way where, like, the motivation behind it and why you're giving someone a gift, like, it needs to be selfless. And for them, it was selfish. And I hate all of it.
Very well said.
Good gifts, but, like, horrible intentions.
Yeah, not a fan. I still think the pizza wins the day. And you can't see it right now, but I'm wearing pink socks with pizza slices all over them. So
can confirm.
Felt fitting for this one. They go really well with this dress. Let's back it up.
Okay.
Let's take it back to season 1, episode 6. A certain Rory Gilmore is turning 16. And she has 2 birthday parties, one thrown by her mother and one thrown by her grandmother. And so, obviously, the original plan was to just do the party in Stars Hollow at their house on Friday night, but with the Friday night dinners, that was no longer a thing, and they tried to get out of it. But then Emily decides to insert herself and is like, well, I'm going to throw Rory a birthday party. How would you like that?
Yep.
Not at all, Emily. Thank you.
And I'm going to invite all of your friends from school that you hate.
Friends used very loosely. Yeah, so in this episode kind of has a lovely moment in it, though, despite the sort of the tensions between everyone from like the middle of the episode through to the end. The shopping scene is very nice. You know, they do go out and they try to find something that Rory would like. And Emily is suggesting things that are maybe a little too much. Like, Rory could potentially use a $400 Mont Blanc pen.
Maybe.
She's very practical. She's very studious. You know, it might be nice to have something fancy.
Mm-hmm.
But the cashmere sweater set in pearls, a little old for a 16-year-old. So, but then, okay, what I really want to talk about with this moment is the fact that Lorelai picks out this like pink guitar purse. Do you think Rory would have picked that? Or is this one of those moments where you think Lorelai is maybe projecting onto Rory a little too much and trying to like make it so that they're the same person? Like,
there might be a little bit of projection there. And I can see how Lorelai is picking out gifts for Rory that, like, you know, Emily, go buy this for her because it's what I maybe would have wanted at this age as opposed to what Rory truly wants. So she's kind of, I think, having a moment with her mother there that she never got when she was Rory's age at that time, because obviously she had, you know, given birth and, you know, was caring for a newborn. So I think it's Lorelai trying to just have that commonality with her mother and experience that moment that she never got for herself. But I also feel like it was about Lorelai trying to make sure that Rory was not too materialistic or started to drown in the Emily and Richard Gilmore, like, you know, love fest with just here's exorbitant amounts of cash and here's, you know, high-end fashion products and new cars and everything like that. And I think she was also she's always tried to keep Rory grounded in that way. So I think it was also just about her being like, she doesn't need $1 million things. And I don't want her to have that because it will go to her head and influence her in a really bad way. So let's get her something that's like, you know, maybe $6, $10, $20. And like, she'll still love it. And it just doesn't inflate her in that way.
Right. They end up picking out those like $12 bracelets that look like something you could get at a car wash. And she's like, that's half the charm. So, yeah, I think you're totally right about the materialism thing. And, you know, birthday presents don't necessarily come down to how much you spend on them, but how much thought you put into them about what somebody else would actually like and use and want. You know, there are so many gifts that people are given that are totally impractical or just have very little thought behind them. And I personally read that pink purse as like, again, Lorelai projecting. This is why I asked the question, because I was like fishing for an answer, leading the witness on this one. I definitely thought that was more of a Lorelai thing, and she just assumed that Rory was quite like her. And we had this conversation when we talked about Lorelai and Rory, but we didn't, I guess, maybe say absolutely everything about this. But like, if you look at even the difference in the way they dress, Lorelai is far more colorful and eccentric, and you know, she'll wear a t-shirt that has a cat with like little rhinestones all over it, but Rory wears muted colors and turtlenecks and corduroy flare pants, and you know, she's very simple, casual, whereas Lorelai goes a little bigger and a little funkier. And so I feel like that purse is something that Lorelai likes, and she just assumes that she and Rory like all the same things. You know, we just had this moment in Kill Me Now where Rory actually enjoyed the club, and she's like, I just thought that you and I were basically the same person and that you would be running away with me from all of this. So it's not wrong for Rory to enjoy a $400 pen, nor for Emily to buy it for her, especially because they have the money. You know, it's all relative. Like, not everybody can afford to do that for you. But when you can and someone gives that to you, like, you don't always necessarily have to like let that go to your head too much. You can just take it for what it is, as a nice gift. So I don't know. I thought it was a little bit of projection.
Yeah. I mean, I can absolutely see that. I think that is a really good thought. But it's also like, and we've talked about this before, how Lorelai and Rory are way too codependent on one another. But it's just kind of feeding into that, where she's just trying to continue to have this common ground and that commonality with Rory and say, like, yeah, like, I love it, she'll love it, we're the same person, we're always going to have all these things in common. And they are very much in a lot of ways the same person, like mother, like daughter is, you know, there for a reason. But Rory does have her own interests and her own likes. And we see, I think you had a really good example of that in terms of even how she dresses. And Lorelai needs to realize that just because Rory might not be on a one-to-one level with you for everything, it doesn't mean that you're like losing her, or that she's like, you know, like your relationship is going to fade in any way. It's just she's her own person in some ways, and that's fine. And Lorelai needs to be okay with that.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the point of the fact that birthdays are points of transition and progression. And Rory's getting older. She is starting to differentiate herself from Lorelai, which is totally normal, natural, and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her to sort of grab something that that purse feels really young. It feels like something a kid would pick out.
Yeah.
And Rory is now 16, and granted, she's still a minor, and it's not like she's, getting a pension or something. Isn't that a joke she makes in the department store? Yeah. She's still looking to the future, getting older, to going off to college. We're moving forward, not backward in time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Lorelai might still be trying to hold on to that youthfulness and trying to keep Rory young and with her and keep things all the same.
Yeah, I agree. But your kid's got to grow up sometime.
Yeah.
And Lorelai needs to just let go a little bit.
Yeah. Let's finish the talk of gifts first. This is jumping ahead a little bit, but then we'll go back and talk about the parties themselves. But at the Stars Hollow birthday, Lorelai gives Rory a very expensive gift. So she's telling Emily, like, why does Rory need a $400 pen? And, don't spend too much money on her, and don't be materialistic. But she buys her an iBook.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little digging. There was a blog from a few years ago that was reviewing retro computers. God, that makes me feel old that watching this is like, it's retro now. And they cited the price for the 1999 Mac iBook at $1,600 in 2000.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And like there were plenty of, like, I'm assuming there were plenty of other personal computers, laptops that were more affordable that Lorelai could have gone with. And like, you're not Miss Moneybags, and you're trying to pay for Rory's school and all these other expensive things. You're saving up for Europe, and people have done this calculus before with Lorelai's income and all of her expenses and whatnot. It's like, how did you afford a $1,600 laptop for your 16-year-old? Like, you could get a used car for that.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't track, because she was even stressing about making a $5,000 down payment for Chilton.
Yeah.
But you're going to turn around and drop this coin on a laptop? And how? Why? Like, if I was Emily and Richard and they do show up to this birthday party at some point, I would just be like, so you're borrowing all this money from us, which I don't even think they care, because then they get that level of control and exertion over Lorelai and Rory. But I would just be like, you can't afford this, but you can afford this. And I could even see Suki just being like, but we're trying to save up to get our own in.
That too.
And so now I get that it's your daughter and you want to splurge on her, and that's fine. But I would also, as Suki, like, I think she would be justified in saying, like, it's your money, it's your choice, but we also have this common financial goal that we're trying to achieve. So, like, maybe let's scale it back a little bit. I think it was a good, and we talked about how, like, gifts need to be well intended. And I think this one was, because Rory had just started Chilton, so it was a gift that was going to be practical, something that she was going to be making use of extensively over the coming years as she went through high school. So it was a good idea, but from a financial standpoint, like, now's not the time to be dropping that amount of money.
It's true. And now that I think about it, when I'm thinking to season 4 and I see her in her dorm room, she does not have the iBook. That thing should have lasted her for like 6 years or longer. And yet she has a different, like, it looks just like a ThinkPad or something.
Yeah.
A much more affordable basic laptop. And I'm like, what happened to the expensive Mac? Ugh. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the parties.
Yes, let's do that.
So I guess Emily's party comes first on Rory's actual birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Anything jump out at you about that one that you want to start with?
Yeah, what a miserable affair for Rory. I mean, I feel so bad for that girl. That was clearly not the event that she wanted to have. You could see how she was stressed out, that, like, she's already having a tough time at Chilton trying to, like, form friendships and even just establish herself in the classroom as, like, a peer. And, Tristan being there just puts it over the edge with, like, that's an individual that I definitely don't want here. That whole event was just what Emily wanted it to be. And what Emily wanted it to be. That was not Rory's it was Rory's birthday party, but it was like Emily's social event planning of the week.
Yeah, it was her excuse to throw a party that she would like under the auspices of doing it for her granddaughter, when obviously it was very clear that she didn't know much about what Rory and Lorelai's vibe is. And so she sets up this fancy party that's like half Richard's business associates who just hand over envelopes of cash, by the way, and Rory's schoolmates who they really haven't told Emily that like Rory doesn't get along with these people. So in a way, you can't necessarily blame Emily for not knowing, but you can blame her for not asking and not being like, who do you want here? She didn't ask about anyone from Stars Hollow. I mean, granted, she knew that they were having a party the next night and that people would go. And so maybe she's like, well, this is your Chilton birthday and tomorrow's your Stars Hollow birthday. You know, looking ahead again a little bit to the 21st birthday, they invite Lane and Zach, you know, people from Stars Hollow are invited, but maybe because she's had a fallout with her mom and knew that there wasn't going to be a Stars Hollow birthday, that they're like, well, this is it. Whereas this first time, not so much. So yeah, she really just kind of took it over and did what she wanted and invited who she wanted because it was socially appropriate. And, you know, it put Rory in a really tough position because she was really trying to be the peace broker between her mother and her grandmother at the time. She saw how well that shopping trip went, and she didn't want to ruffle any feathers or rock the boat when things were going well. And so this 16-year-old girl is trying to manage the emotions of two grown women as well as her own when she's been put in this really like tough position. You guys might be able to hear a dog barking. That is the love of my life. Just ignore him. But yeah, it's really uncomfortable, especially when Emily tries to get her to give a speech in front of everyone. Like, who does that?
Hard pass.
I've never given a speech on my birthday. That's like a wedding thing.
Nope. And as much as Rory is probably good at public speaking and enjoys it, like not in the heat of that moment. And I think it was like wonderful that at the end of the night, Lorelai calls Emily out on her ish and was just like what you said, like, you never asked her mom. You never asked, is this what she wanted? You just assumed that these were her friends, that she was automatically going to be getting along with these people from school. Like, she hated this, but she's too nice to ever tell you that. So I'm going to tell you it for her. So I love how Lorelai stood up for her. And I also love how that party ended with Rory just being like, well, you know, we're having another party tomorrow, so maybe you guys can come to that one. And like, going back to what you said about her managing those emotions, even though Rory had a miserable evening, she was still just putting forth that like olive branch of peace to be like, you know, you can still come tomorrow. Like, you know, I want you there. Like, you're my grandparents. You're an important part of my life. So I thought that was a really sweet moment. And we'll obviously get to like, do Emily and Richard show up?
You're about to find out.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah, so let's move on to the second party then and move on to Stars Hollow, which is like, you know, you've got Miss Patty, you've got Babette and Maury, you've got Lane, Suki, a bunch of extras we've never met. Luke shows up with ice to save the day. Suki does the catering and makes the cake with Rory's face on it, which reminds me, I didn't mention this when we talked about Lorelai's birthday, but Rory gets a 4-foot tall chocolate cake from Weston's, covered in individual vanilla cupcakes, and it said happy 16th birthday Lorelai, which was very fitting because yeah, she's a little bit stuck at the age of 16. And again, also forgot, how did I forget this? The birthday Malabars. She like takes one off the table and replaces it with a new one from the box. They're my birthday Malabars. I didn't want to like mess this up. And Luke just banters with her back and forth about like how insane it is to eat one and replace it instead of just eating one out of the box. But yes, anyways, back to Rory's party. The cake with her face on it. Help me eat her face. Classic.
Great line.
Yeah. This is definitely one of those like epic, iconic episodes that everybody remembers from season 1 for the cake and for the scene that ends up in the opening credits where they're on the porch and hugging. And I always forgot what that actually was. It's Lorelai suggesting they have a food fight.
And then just running back inside to get it going.
Yeah, and then at the end of the party, though, you see the house, and there's no food anywhere. So I'm like, did it happen? Did it only happen in the living room? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Emily and Richard do show up at the party. And I love how Lorelai's like, it's a party. Get your asses in here.
And then they walk in the door just like, oh, Mom, Dad,
Yeah.
hi.
And this is super significant because it's the first time they've been in Lorelai's house.
Mhm.
They came to the inn when Rory was little, but they've never been to Lorelai's house. And they start looking around. Richard puts on his insurance hat, not to be confused with the party hat, and inspects her chimney, of all things. And, Emily's taking a look around and seeing the interactions that these girls have with the town and how much they're beloved. And she's starting to realize how much she missed of their lives. And so it's one of those really bittersweet moments where it feels like progress has been made, but by the end of the night, she just feels kind of dejected by it.
Mm-hmm. Emily certainly does, and it's understandable, but it's her own fault. Like, you perpetuated this in terms of, what you did to Lorelai early on. That's, its own topic that we have talked about that I'm sure we'll talk about more going forward. But I love what it does for Emily going forward, because she is able to realize, like, I've missed out on so much. I don't want to miss out on anything further. And then even down the line, we see when Lorelai gets engaged, doesn't tell Emily and Richard about it, and they find out from Suki. It's just kind of contrasting with this, where, then Emily goes into the study and is just like, you're going to make amends with Rory tomorrow for what's been going on, because I don't want to miss out on Rory's life in the same way that we've been missing out on Lorelai's. So I think it's a really good parallel here to them showing up for Rory. They could have stayed home. They didn't have to come to this birthday party, but they made the drive and the effort to be there, and to involve themselves at Rory's request. And I think that was a really sweet thing for them to do. Emily obviously had a lot of internal emotions that she had to contend with, but Richard definitely seemed to enjoy himself. I mean, we discovered that he is an autumn.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
As Gilmore fans,
Yep.
autumns.
But he was also, I think, able to, even though he spent a lot of the time out on the porch just like reading magazines and doing horoscope quizzes, I think he also was able to bond a little bit more with Rory too, just from the brief conversations that they had when they were outside together. Gives her another check for Fez, because Fez is expensive city. But I love how just them being there and taking the time to show up really was like a step forward for everyone in that family in terms of being more close.
Yeah, it definitely feels a bit like a turning point in all of their relationships, because the first couple of episodes are a little rocky for them, and this does feel like one of those moments. But Emily is not wrong when she says, Lorelai was right. I don't know my daughter at all. And I think that brings us to Rory's 21st birthday, where, it's been 5 years. Rory's been living with them. They've had all of these years to get to know her better. And once again, Emily throws her a party that's to her taste. She asks Rory's opinion at first, but then Rory's like, I trust you. Just make all the decisions. And, I'm too distracted for this. I don't really feel like celebrating this because it's not how I expected my 21st birthday to go, and I just kind of want to let it pass. So it's one of those temporal landmarks where even after all this time, we see that Emily is still Emily, and her ability to listen and to empathize and think about what somebody else wants and needs is lacking at times. And oh God, I love this episode. Like it's just so delightful. It starts out with her walking in on Rory and Logan necking on the couch. They certainly weren't looking for her keys. And asking Logan, like, hey, do you have anything planned for Rory's birthday next weekend? I'm thinking of throwing her a party. And Logan is completely taken aback by this. Rory didn't even tell him about this birthday because she was so sort of hoping to just let it pass and not think about it too much, given that they had been talking about this since she was in kindergarten about going to Atlantic City. And you see the parallels in the conversations that Lorelai has with Richard at the beginning, with Luke at the beginning, and the conversation Rory has with Logan. You see how connected they still are and how similar they still are in a lot of ways through that conversation. But just the fact that she didn't even tell Logan, yikes.
Why do you think she was so, why do you think she was trying to sweep this birthday under the radar?
Well, like I said, they had been planning this for 15 years-ish. Basically when Rory was in kindergarten would have been about the time Lorelai was turning 21 herself. But with a young child, she wasn't really able to go out and do much and celebrate coming of age.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you guys are 21 and here it's 19, so like y'all are behind a little bit. But you know, she wasn't able to celebrate it in the way that she might have chosen for herself. And so once again, I think maybe it's her projecting onto Rory, like, this is what I would have done, so let's do it when you turn 21. Let's put this off. And yeah, I think it was really just the fact that this would be her first birthday without Lorelai. And she wasn't very excited about it, despite the fact that 21 is a major milestone in your country. So
yeah, certainly is. Do you think that the night was made better or even more like tense and awkward by Lorelai showing up, Rory making that phone call last minute to invite her? How do you feel about how all of that went down? Because yes, I do agree that Rory was definitely having some really just birthday blues about, you know, my mom is not going to be here to celebrate this one with me. I hate that we're fighting. I hate that this whole Atlantic City trip that we've been talking about like forever is probably not going to come to fruition. It's cool that Logan offers to like step in and still let her have that, but it was never going to be the same because that was the Lorelai and Rory thing. But how do you feel about that last minute phone call to involve her? Where do you think it was coming from, stemming from? Was it the right move, or was it just you're creating more unnecessary tension?
I think she genuinely did want her there. It was hard for them both to accept that they wanted to be there or have the other be there. And you know, it was Emily who first asked the question, should I invite your mother? And Rory's like, yeah, invite her. And then when she doesn't RSVP, because she assumes it's from Richard via Emily and not from Rory herself, she kind of brushes it off herself and is like, she's also hurting because she's had this expectation all of these years that she would be celebrating this major thing with her daughter. And this year they're fighting. But I'm glad that she called Luke's and yelled and sort of pushed it and asked if they were coming. I'm glad that she extended the olive branch. She's a lot better at that than some of the other characters in the show. So I'm glad that it happened because it was a major step forward to their reconciliation in like 2 episodes time from now. Yeah. You can really see the turning point for Rory starting to happen in the last couple episodes with the sort of increased surveillance from Richard and Emily, and they're trying to insert themselves into her sex life with Logan by inviting their reverend over to tell her that she should be careful who she gives her ultimate gift to because she'll have to buy the next guy a sweater. I love that scene so much.
Yes, newsflash, that ship has sailed.
It's probably in Fiji by now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're really starting to insert themselves, and she misses her mom, and she misses their relationship and the freedom and the way that they would celebrate in the past. So this doesn't really feel like her or like them. And it's getting her down. But I'm glad that Lorelai and Luke show up and that, you know, Luke really steps up and is there for her as well. And even brings her like a family heirloom gift with the pearl necklace. And, you know, that was really nice of him. So I was glad to see them there.
Yeah. It's too bad we don't have Rory's this time around, but I am missing them today.
Yeah, we didn't really get a chance to get the ingredients together for that in time for this, but we do have some high noons, so good enough.
We're getting there. Yeah. But how do you think that overall night went? Like, do you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? How do you perceive that birthday party and that event?
Again, I think it was bittersweet. It certainly was not as dramatic as it could have been. I think overall it was pretty good. You could see that like they missed each other when they were having those interactions with each other. You could see that there was care there and that they wanted to mend that bridge. But they couldn't quite get all the way there just yet. But the 2 other big things happened. I'm going to touch on the like less important one first. Emily finds out that Lorelai's engaged in this one by seeing the ring on her finger. And like that could have been another sort of emotional blow up, but it wasn't. And yeah, it just, you know, it's kind of shades of Max, as you were alluding to earlier. She just sort of is like, well, I see congratulations are in order. Well, that wasn't exactly congratulations, but good enough.
Yep.
So there's that. And then the other thing I think that sort of tipped the scales for Rory, and we really see, you know, we've talked about this before, but in Let Me Hear Your Balalaikas ringing out when Jess comes to town, everybody sort of credits him with getting Rory back to Yale.
Right.
But I think one of the things that like really started to get to Rory even before that happened was having Paris and Doyle come and Paris announcing that she is the new editor of the Yale Daily News. I think seeing her peers moving on and moving up and accomplishing things that she wanted for herself really starts to push her back to herself.
Yeah, I would agree. I love Team Jess all day, but I will stand in the camp of like, he was not the sole influence that did get her back on track. And I do agree that Paris had a part to play, even in terms of maybe just unhealthy competition and just, this girl is stealing my thunder. She's now achieving everything that I wanted to. But I think Rory needed a kick in the where in that way to make that happen. And Paris in that moment, but just in general, was always really good with like pushing Rory to want to be better for herself and just to like, get off the couch, get off your ass, and just get back into it. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few other notable things that happen at the party that I think are interesting or good. We have Lane meeting Logan for the first time. And this is what really bugs me about Emily in this episode, is when Emily is asking Rory who she wants to invite, and she says, should we invite your Asian friend? Lane will probably want to bring her boyfriend too. Oh, great. Rory's Asian friend and her boyfriend. Like, she just told you her name. Why are you continuing to be super racist about this? And then Emily mentions Paris and her and Rory brings up her boyfriend. And so she can call Paris by her name, but not Lane, even though she's met Lane and she's met Mrs. Kim. She really liked Mrs. Kim. Like, why does she feel the need to be like, Rory's Asian friend?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it. And I think that's the problem, is that there is no good answer. She was just being unnecessarily racist.
Yeah. There's lots of that like anti-Asian sentiment. And I'm sure we'll get to talking about more of that later. But we do need to keep this moving. Can you imagine how much money that party cost, though?
It was easily 5 figures.
Oh, God, yeah.
That was easily a 10 grand event. And it's like, people don't even spend that much sometimes on their wedding day.
Yeah.
In terms of the event. And you're just dropping, again, this amount of coin for Rory's birthday party. Like, influenza.
Yeah, yes, it's a major milestone, but totally unnecessary. All right, let's move this along. In season 3, episode 10, we have Richard's 60th birthday party, which is interesting. I love how Emily calls Lorelai at the end and is like, so the birthday dinner for your grandfather is back on Wednesday night. And she's like, were we invited to this?
Yeah.
She's like, well, of course we'd be invited. But, your father said that parties are for children, basically. But then his mood changes and he decides, yes, I do want a birthday dinner. And so they have it. And Emily, you can tell how excited Emily is about the gift she's picked out for him. The humidor owned by a lieutenant from World War I. So that's a pretty good gift. Yeah. Like, that shows that she knows her husband. So I love that. And then, but I think the thing that's most interesting about this episode is the birthday gift situation. Because, like, Richard's birthday dinner at the end obviously blows up and ends, interestingly, with tricks.
Yeah.
But
boy, does it.
We'll get to that. But I think the most salient part of this for the characters and for their, for understanding their dynamics with each other is Lorelai is struggling to pick out a birthday present for Richard, which is very out of character for her. We see in season 1 that she is an excellent gift giver, that she knows what she's doing when it comes to shopping for other people. And so the fact that she's having a hard time coming up with anything for her father beyond like a scale and a coin sorter and a bow tie, but she could buy like the perfect gift for practical strangers. I find it telling. Is there anything that sort of like stands out to you about the interactions with Rory and her selection of gift for Richard and how she sort of like steps in to help at Lorelai?
Yeah, I think it was maybe just, it makes me think of like, the season 1 episode where Rory goes to the country club and she hits it off with Richard and they're having that commonality. I think that maybe Rory, was able to pick out a better gift and, step in and help her mom in that way, which I'm glad she did. But I think maybe Lorelai was just having moments of just reconciliation with like, I don't know my father as well as I thought that I did. And that's really affecting me right now because here's a major milestone for him. I don't even know what to do. I don't know what's best for him. I think she's maybe contending with a lot of those feelings of like, you said it well yourself before, like they missed out so much on her life, but she missed out on being a part of their life actively too for so long. So I think she's also having to reckon with like, I don't have the relationship with my parents as well as I wanted to, and now here I am struggling to even pick out a good gift for him, and Rory has to step in and do it. And I think that's also maybe a bit hurtful for Lorelai because she's realizing like my daughter knows my parents even better than I do.
Yeah, it's true. Like, and Rory feels comfortable enough to, talk to Richard about what he wants, like what's on his wish list. But I also don't think that necessarily Richard is the most opaque person. Like, it's clear that he loves to read, and it's clear that he loves cigars and fine liquor and all. Like, it's really that hard, Lorelai? Is it? I don't know.
No, I mean, yeah, I think there were some pretty easy tells in terms of like what would have been a good gift for him, but I think she was struggling in the way that I said, and I think it was just making it hard for her, and then just having to celebrate this time, just having all of those thoughts like in the back of her mind. I think she was just having a personally tough time just with all of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the tricks of it all real quick. Because, as I said, Emily was very excited about the humidor she picked out. And then Trix comes in and says, your father had a humidor that was owned by Victor Hugo. I think I still have it if you want it. And so I think it, again, is very indicative of the relationship between Trix and Emily, how Trix always has to come in and mess things up for her. It's sort of like outshine her, outdo her.
Yeah, Trix is definitely always a one-upper. And we have talked a bit before, and I'm sure we will again, about the relationship between Emily and Trix as, that's her mother-in-law, and how she feels about Emily and her never having been good enough. All a different topic of conversation, but it totally tracks that Trix would roll up and just be like, psych, gotcha, I did better here. And Emily's just gonna, she's just there like seething inwardly about it and feeling so bitter about it. But it was a great comedic moment, and it's just, that's what you would expect from Trix. If she rolled up and she was just like, yeah, here's, I don't know, 1 or 2 cigars, like, Richard would like it, but, like, Trix is always going to be like, whatever Emily does, I'm going to do better.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so again, backing up in time a little bit, the reason we know that Lorelai is such a good gift giver comes from P.S. I Left. When she steps in to help Luke pick out a birthday gift for Rachel, she runs into Luke on the street, and he has just come from Le Chat Club. And she's like, you had an errand to run at Le Chat Club. And so it turns out that Luke has gotten Rachel kitty pot holders that meow. And I mean, as much as I would love those, Rachel would not. And it's a bad gift. And Lorelai offers to step in and help out and be like, I'm going shopping tomorrow. Give me your credit card. Everything will be returnable. I'll get you some options, and we'll see how it goes. And then she comes into the diner the next day with a bunch of bags. She's like all hopped up on like a cinnamon roll or something. Or no, cinnamon sugar pretzel. I think it was cinnamon sugar pretzel. And Luke's like, did nobody at the department store notice that you were going through some sort of psychotic episode? Because she buys like so much stuff. But she really did nail the present for Rachel with Out of Africa and that beautiful leather camera bag. Very practical, very like on point for what Rachel would like. And the fact that Lorelai, who's only met Rachel a handful of times, knocked this out of the park when Luke was like going to Le Chat Club. Like, what? Okay, so I think this is one of those things that to me feels emblematic of the writing of the show, where they have the tendency to make the guys look really dumb to make Lorelai look better. Not to say that Lorelai's not competent and smart, but I think they like really hammer home how useless the men are to make Lorelai look like a superhero.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I agree. And if you have more to say on Rachel, please say it. But we also see this happen when Lorelai steps in to save the day at April's birthday party.
We'll get to that next.
Yeah. Yes. Luke is definitely not the best gift giver nor the best event planner, but you can't, like, it's a stretch to have me believe that he's that inept and that he's that incompetent. at picking out a gift for a woman that you're dating, that you're currently in this relationship with. It's, again, cool that Lorelai steps in, but she shouldn't have had to that extensively. Luke should have been a little bit more knowledgeable. So yeah, the whole dumbing down of them to get Lorelai to step in that way, it just feels like just weak writing to an extent.
Yeah. And I mean, Luke goes on a bit of a rant about this in the street where he's like, you know, she hates birthdays. She like doesn't even really care about this. I was just getting something I thought she might like. And then he says, you know, like suddenly on a certain date, my level of affection for a person isn't measured by the way I treat them or what we share. You know, like basically if I don't get them the right present, suddenly I suck.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of feeds into this conversation about birthday gifts and what they mean to another person, but not to you.
Yeah.
And so it like, he's not necessarily wrong about maybe how much pressure it can be put on a person to get the perfect gift,
mm-hmm.
but also the fact that he's so bad at it. Like, no, Luke, it has nothing to do with like you sucking or your relationship not being good. It has to do with like just how well you know someone. And like the fact that you think someone like Rachel could be into meowing kitty pot holders says a lot about how much like thought you put into her birthday gift. And we can see this contrasted when he like gives Lorelai an ice rink in a woman of questionable morals. Like, that was a pretty good gift and it wasn't even her birthday. So like it proves that he can be thoughtful in the right circumstances, but the fact that they have to like walk him back so much and make it seem like he doesn't give a crap about Rachel at all is just, it's kind of tacky and it's weak.
Yeah, and I also just think it was maybe a sign of just Rachel was never going to be the right woman for him, so he wasn't putting in the thought and the care and the effort that he obviously did and that we see play out with Lorelai for that reason alone.
Yeah. And Lorelai white knighting for Luke and like coming in to save the day is a big like recurring thing, which brings me to our next birthday, which is of course April Nardini.
Mm-hmm.
Her 13th birthday at Luke's Diner is just such a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
I love when they first get there and Luke's like, this is the party area. You are not to leave the party area. Do not go into the kitchen. You can cut off your fingers or like poke an eye out and do not go upstairs.
Yeah, and doesn't even realize like, you know, oh, these girls might have to go to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden like a dozen preteen girls have to go to the bathroom at once, and he's like, all right, let's single file line it that way, just go.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
no
so
clue.
like unhinged. Oh, it's so great. And then, you know, he's really getting into a groove with April and he wants to do something nice for her. And, you know, he gets the decorations and he gets the cake and he tries to get her a gift. Like, they walk past the store and he sees a toiletry kit covered in cats. What is it with him and cats?
I don't know.
I mean, I love cats as much as the next girl, as the next crazy cat lady. But, like, what?
I don't know.
Lorelai was totally right about that not being an appropriate gift. And she's like, Luke, I can really help you here. Like, please just let me be involved. And he's like, no, the minute you get involved, it's over for me. You're basically like a cartoon character and she's going to like you more and it's going to be over for me. And in a way, he's not wrong, but he's also like, maybe the boundary is too strict.
Yeah.
And he needs to like loosen it up a little bit. Although like you can see during the party how much April and Lorelai are able to bond and how Lorelai is able to kind of turn the party into a great experience for her, which, you know, it shows that Luke is still getting his feet and still kind of learning about what it takes to raise a kid and how you can't just do the bare minimum. Like, he thinks that the birthday party is the activity. And so these girls are playing cards and looking at their phones and like not talking to each other because there's nothing to do. There's nothing interactive. And Lorelai has to come in and again be the savior for the day. And once again, they go sort of hyperbolically making Luke look inept and dumb. Like, have you never been to a birthday party before to know that there are activities for kids of that age? Like, excuse me?
I mean, maybe not, but also Lorelai has obviously had years and years of practice with this, just planning Rory's birthday parties. So she's going to know what activities are good for girls of that age, what needs to happen. And I think April was, you know, glomming onto her in that way just because she was so grateful to have like a save the day sort of birthday party situation where it was going to allow the girls that she had invited to like just keep those friendships and maybe not go back to school like the next day or the next week and just be like, ugh, so that sucked. Like that was the worst birthday party I've ever been to. And that can really impact girls at that age too when, you're just trying to
make and keep friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And April has that issue, especially when Anna suggests they move to New Mexico. You see April really struggles socially to try to like make and form bonds.
Yeah.
And I think this probably was something that was really good for her because in the end the party was a hit. They did the makeover thing, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
They watched Pretty in Pink. They turned it into a slumber party. And yeah, Anna comes back and says the whole thing was a big hit, but with the caveat that she chewed Luke out for involving Lorelai in this in the first place. What do you think about that? Like, do you think that Anna was off base or like totally out of line in ripping Luke a new one after letting the girls sleep alone upstairs with Lorelai?
No, I actually think that she was pretty justified in some of what she was saying. I don't think that she had to bite Luke and Lorelai's head off in the way that she did. But I think that even when Lorelai goes to her shop to talk with her afterwards and try and smooth things out, I think that Anna approached it in a very cool and calm and level-headed type of way, and she made excellent points. Like, I don't know you. My daughter doesn't really know you yet. All of these other girls that I am entrusting Luke to be responsible for on behalf of their parents and their guardians, like I will trust Luke with that because I know him, but I don't know you. And now all of a sudden I'm entrusting the care of all of these other girls to somebody that I don't know and I can't vouch for. That would make any parent, I think, understandably upset and uncomfortable because it is about the safety of these girls too. So she was making really good points there. So I don't think that she necessarily needed to be as brash with Luke about it as she was. It could have been communicated a little bit better, but she had ground to stand on with what she was saying.
Yeah, this was a hard one for me because I think in a way she like blew it out of proportion a little bit with her reaction with Luke, simply because, she found out about this after the fact, which is a tough pill to swallow for any parent to be like, you did what? But obviously things were okay in the end. And so nobody got hurt. Everything was fine. The party was a hit. She heard good things about Lorelai and about what happened. I think that we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail when we talk about Luke, April, and Anna and the whole dynamic there. But the problem was Luke trying to keep Lorelai out of his relationship with April for so long. I think if he had been a little more upfront and tried to make that introduction sooner, both to April and Anna, and tried to involve Anna in the process a little bit and have them meet, because again, we will go into so much more depth about this, but Luke and Lorelai are getting married. They are partners now. They need to do things together. They need to be involved deeply in each other's lives. You can't compartmentalize like this all the time, especially not with something so important. And so yes, they're not married yet, but they were on the cusp of it right around this time. So April's birthday falls, according to the release schedule for the show, in April. Very clever name, Anna. Well done. Did the Demerol kick in? Good Lord. Yeah. So yeah, I think that it could have been avoided with more communication and openness and saying this is Lorelai. She is my life partner now. She's going to be around. She's going to be involved. You need to know her. So I think it was sort of his oversight that caused a lot of the problems. And then he got mad at Lorelai for going to see Anna and talking to her in the first place, as if Lorelai has no right to be involved in this whatsoever.
Yeah, that was also a no-go from me. I think Lorelai needed to go to Anna and have that conversation and apologize and try and, talk it out in the way that she did. And I think it's wrong for, again, the way that you put it, I think is an excellent way to phrase it. You can't have everything so black and white anymore. When you're agreeing to enter into a marriage with this person, you can't have that separation anymore. So it's going to take time. Nothing is going to happen overnight, but you need to allow Anna and Lorelai, and perhaps even when Rory comes into the picture, like you need to have all of that come together in like a healthy way, especially for April's sake, as a minor here. But you can't have that be so you're over here, this is your box anymore. There needs to be a way to like have that all brought together. And again, it's not going to happen instantly, but it needs to happen. And Luke needs to understand that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of Lorelai being an expert birthday planner and like really knowing what kids like to do at birthday parties, in season 7, we have Logan Huntsberger's 25th birthday party. And Rory kind of reaches back into her childhood to remember all the great birthday parties that Lorelai threw her as a way to give Logan the Gilmore treatment. Because, like, then this is one of those moments where I feel really, really bad for Logan because it sounds like his childhood was bleak.
Yep.
He never really had parties with his friends. He, like, never really got a proper birthday cake. It was always something fancy and flambéed with alcohol in it, which is totally not appropriate for a children's birthday party.
Yep.
A child's birthday party, that's not grammar. But yeah, so it sounds like his family wasn't really into birthdays because a birthday isn't something you achieve. Everybody has a birthday. And that's really sad. Like, his childhood must have been sad.
It probably was, knowing that you have Shira and Mitchum as your parents. And, you know, even though we've talked about it, like, you know, Logan's my boy, that's my son, he's going to take on the family name. I can foresee, you know, a 7-year-old Logan just being like, Dad, birthday. And Mitchum's just like, I'm busy, son, you know. So he probably didn't have those same experiences that Rory or that any other, you know, your average child did in terms of having the birthday parties thrown for you. It probably was just like a happy birthday, son, here's some money. You know, I could foresee that for him. So I think when we get around to this birthday party that we see for him as he's turning 25, it probably is one of the first instances of like an actual celebration on his behalf that he's been given.
Yeah, I love what Rory says to him when she's bringing him breakfast in bed, which is also really cute. She's like, you know, we're celebrating the day that this world went from being one without Logan Huntsberger to being one with Logan Huntsberger. And that's really kind of the crux of birthdays. It's like just celebrating people's existences and what they've brought to your life and celebrating their lifelong, like, interaction with the world. There's a lot to be like grateful for and celebrate for with that. So I love that. And, you know, she goes back, like I said, into her own memory of her childhood, and she calls Lorelai asking about parties. And so, like, they're talking about how for her 6th birthday, they did a space party with spacesuits made out of garbage bags and freeze-dried ice cream and Tang. And then how her 7th birthday was a fiesta with tacos and freeze-dried ice cream.
Yep.
And then, you know, number 8 was teddy bear tea party. Number 12 was ice skating in Central Park. You know, like, Lorelai really did what she could with what she had. She was very clever and just tried to give Rory memorable parties, whereas, you know, Logan never got that. And so I think it's so sweet that Rory comes in and like decorates the whole apartment with the traditional stuff and gets him one of those cakes that you would normally get for an 8-year-old. And it's just so sweet that she's trying to like give him a childhood a little bit.
Yeah.
And then obviously we have the dinner with Mitchum, which is the complete opposite of that, which is sort of cold and sterile. And once again, it's like some fancy non-cake dessert. Like, oh, I asked Markham to make you something special for your birthday. And it was like something ridiculous. And it's just a really uncomfortable birthday dinner. And Mitchum seems to be coming around to Logan and seeing him growing up. And he remarks on that to Rory. He's like, he's finally growing up. Like, you can see that he's really taking on this whole business thing, taking it to heart. And he's making progress. But we still need to pick his next move. Like, we need to keep pushing him to achieve more and do more because, God forbid, you do something that's, you know, just not tied to capitalist progression.
Yeah, that's the Huntsbergers for you. But again, I think it was just hitting off of everything you said. It was really sweet for Rory to do that. I hope Logan just took it to heart and took it to stock in terms of, like, you know, that's how you should be treating someone who's special in your life in that way. And I just hitting home on what you said, which I think is the most excellent point. It's about celebrating someone existing in the world where they previously didn't. So whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, a partner, a spouse, whomever, that's why we should be celebrating these things. because it's just always a joyous and positive occasion when you have someone that you care about in your life, just and you're marking this is when you came into the world, and it's a better place for it.
Mm-hmm. Also, sorry if you guys hear more barking. There are now 2 dogs here, and we're gonna try to give some quick lip service to a few more before wrapping this up, because we're trying to get to a party. In case you didn't notice, it's not a birthday party, but we are about to have a party. So it's a bit of a holiday here. So let's move on. Oh, actually, no. Before we do, I just want to point out that this is the episode 2 where Logan gets the call from Philip about the cease and desist from a company out of Palo Alto claiming patent infringement. So it's a really bitter end to Logan's birthday to find out that his business deal is not only not going through, but is going to cost them millions. That he really fucked up. Sorry, YouTube algorithm, but
it's the best way to put it.
Yeah,
we're not sugarcoating here.
They done goofed, and it's really unfortunate. But yeah, that's a bad way to have your birthday end. Actually, it's not even the end because they hadn't even left for ice skating yet. But yeah, all right. Let's talk about Lucy's birthday quickly.
Okay.
So her 21st comes in season 7. Talk to me about Marty and what he does on Lucy's birthday.
I appreciate Marty's bartending skills. The drink purveyor is always an important role to have, but can we not behave so immaturely? And I get that we're still just always we're in our 20s, we're 21 or whatever, but and I hate using this phrase, but I'm just gonna use it anyway. Maybe just man up a little bit, or just maybe even just grow up. Stop being such an immature something that I won't say, and just recognize that this is her day, this is her moment. Put aside all of the baggage and everything that you have and all of your feelings, and just put a clamp on it and just be there for Lucy.
Yeah. It's just so inappropriate for him to be hitting on Rory at his girlfriend's birthday party.
Yeah.
Ugh. No. Yeah. And he was just so rude to her when she came over with a box of stuff decorations.
Yeah, and if I was Lucy, what?
Yeah. Speaking of what kind of theme is 2002? Paris is so not wrong about this. So bizarre. The revival of the Ugg boot, 4 years later. As if the Ugg boots ever really left.
No, I was still wearing them.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, so. No.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep. All right. And last but not least, we have Michelle in A Year in the Life. He mentions he had just celebrated a milestone birthday and he wants to have a drink with Lorelai to talk about it. And, it's one of those moments where he's sort of lying about his age a little bit, which, is one of those pretty ubiquitous things in media where people are not honest about how old they are. And, Lorelai's 50, and he's no. Well, you're not 40 because you weren't 17 when I met you. And he's this is the problem with knowing people a long time. They can backdate you.
Yeah, but it tracks for Michelle because we've already talked about this in the last episode that we just did about food and diet culture. Michelle has a lot of reservations, but also just hiccups with his own well-being and his aging process and the food that he consumes. So it fits perfectly in line here that of course she's going to just be I'm not old, and wanting to lie about his age. Yeah, it tracks for me. And I love that Lorelai is calling him out on it, and trying to get him to that point of just being you're not old. You're at the age that you are, which is always just aging is going to happen. But I love how she was trying to just talk Michelle off this middle-age existential crisis that he was having, and just how that led into if you can't give me more to do with this job, or I can't get more money. He was definitely having what you alluded to earlier on in this episode of just, I'm not where I want to be. I thought I should be more successful. I'm not at the point that I want to be in my life. And he's not the only person to do it. I feel every time, when birthdays roll around, people of any age can just have those moments where they're just I'm X years old, so I should be here in life and I'm not. And we should never do that to ourselves. Michelle should not do it to himself. No one should ever do that to yourself. Everyone is living, hopefully, the best life that they can. But everyone's forward movement and progress is always going to be at a different speed. There's nothing wrong with that. I think if I would give advice to anyone who's celebrating a birthday and feeling that way, just you're exactly where you need to be and where you should be at in your own personal life and just focus on you. Don't look at what the world tells you should be or like where you should be at in life, and just understand like you're exactly where the universe wants you to be.
Yeah, and I can understand a little bit how he's been doing the same thing for a long time, and people do kind of need that improvement, that progress. Like it's sort of an innate human drive normally to want to move forward and to grow. And it's interesting because, you know, he's in his 40s at least, possibly 50. We're not entirely sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's very opaque about that. And he's only seemingly just gotten married in the last couple of years. They're talking about having a baby. And, you know, we know that he's a little bit vain. And so there's probably an element of that in it,
Mm-hmm.
which is typically something that's sort of like very gendered on women. Like,
yeah,
you know, men age like fine wine, but women, like once you hit 30, it's like you're a spinster and you're, you know, you've passed your prime now. And I think that this particular show actually does a pretty good job at avoiding that narrative. Even like, you know, Lorelai and Luke getting married at 48, great, love it. And Michelle is kind of in that same place too. But the other areas of his life are moving forward, but his work really isn't. And he needs to have a reckoning about that in order to like feel like he's at a good place in his life. And so I don't blame him for wanting more or more money or more responsibility, but yeah, it's an interesting one. It's kind of like just a blip on the radar. Mm-hmm. I almost forgot about it when coming up with ideas for this episode, but mm-hmm. It's kind of an interesting poignant moment that sort of demonstrates the whole time marches forward and we have to deal with that. And it's very emblematic of a lot of the things we've been talking about. So I think it's also kind of an interesting place to leave things off. But before we totally wrap this, mm-hmm. I just want to point out that like those are basically the only characters we get birthdays for. Like we don't know Emily's birthday, Dean, Jess, Luke. Even we know he's a Scorpio, but we don't know his actual birthday. So yeah, a lot of major characters never get a birthday party or have their birthdays acknowledged, even in a year in the life, which is like a full cycle. Someone should have had a birthday besides Michelle.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah, we have no idea anybody else's birthdays. So
no, but maybe one day Revival 2.0.
Yeah, just give us a birthday special and just like everyone's birthdays were all year.
Yep. Yeah. And I'd watch it.
Yeah, totally.
That being said, that's gonna wind us down for this one. But what do we have coming up next?
Next up, we're going to be talking about Keg Max and Say Goodnight, Gracie. So we've decided that the sort of thematic pullouts from that one are masculinity and sort of how the show portrays sort of the typical ideas of masculinity through characters like Jess and Dean and Luke, and how maybe some of those elements are a little toxic. So, but not all of them. And so we will be touching on both like sort of the positive masculine and the toxic masculine and sort of contrasting, you know, kind of going back to our talk about gender expectations, expanding on that a little more and focusing on something the show doesn't address as much because it is so much about women. And so we're going to look at the flip side of that coin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Come back and join us for that. In the meantime, if you want more GG content, go back and watch some of our previous episodes. We've had some really spectacular guests on with us the past few weeks. We had Larissa from Eating Gilmore talk with us about food. Go back and check that out. We also talked about FanFest and the Firelight event that's happening in Algonquin, Maine this fall. Go back and check that out. Consider buying a ticket to that event if you want to attend and just dive deep into the GG world. We'll include a link to that below. But in the meantime,
yeah, that's going to wrap us up.
That's going to wrap us up, and that'll do it.
We are going to go join the party, go play with some doggos.
Yep. And we hope you enjoy your weekend as well. And that being said, we'll see you
next Friday
for dinner.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.